Hello boys and girls, today we're going to be talking about my cast on crit Scion Vortex, but also Frostbolt and Ice Nova character. The reason why I said Vortex because we use a pretty cheeky strategy with the mouse wheel that I'm going to be explaining in just a little bit. But the build so far has been incredibly fun, super duper powerful. I honestly wasn't expecting it to be nearly as strong. A big problem that I thought we're going to have is going to be just not enough single targets since we do not use a cost breeze, but it ended up kind of working out in our advantage. Currently I am using a multi-modded claw with hits cannot be evaded, and fortunately also without the cost breeze, this allows us to utilize elemental equilibrium if we just only deal some lightning or some fire damage on possibly a ring or a abyss jewel. In my case, it's the jewel, and it's been working out pretty great. Honestly, zero single target problems. The build utilizes a ton of different abilities. One of those skills that I wanted to use was War Banner, but I don't have enough key bindings for it, and the reason why I wanted to use War Banner was for the single target, but because we don't have enough key bindings, I'm not using it, but it still works out pretty great. And what's especially cool about this build is that it's a kind of typical Cyclone build, but it's also like the old school cast and crit. But on top of it, because the game has changed so much now, we also get all these situational abilities. So for instance, we use focus for whenever we need more leech with a multi-modded you have Volpack while focus amulet that also gives us 10% of damage leeches life while focused, which is a ton because this is a Scion Ascendant with Slayer and Pathfinder. So that's something really cool. We also use acrobatics and phase acrobatics with Vogue Raise. So with this, we're capped or very close to capped dodge and spell dodge. Obviously, we're using Whirling Blades for our Fortify and also some of our mobility. Currently, I am lacking a little bit of attack speed, but do keep in mind that it's still a build diary. Obviously, the build's going to go through many changes and also through many upgrades. So we're definitely looking to increase the amount of attack speed that we can possibly get. Vol Righteous Fire, which again, another situational ability. With the Slayer, you don't really feel the HP loss at all, and it's a tremendous single target increase. We also use Blood Rage with an increased duration Arcane Surge setup, so that's also something that you can instantaneously use in a fight to give yourself Arcane Surge. And yeah, the coolest of the bunch, which is the Vortex. So as many of you know, this build relies very heavily on the interaction between Frostbolt and Ice Nova. With the Frostbolt Threshold Jewel, we release 3 Frostbolts every time we perform a critical strike during the rotation where our alternating cast on crit is hitting the Frostbolt. So we release 3 Frostbolts, and anytime we release the Ice Nova through the cast on crit, it releases 2 Ice Novas, which means that essentially the Threshold Jewel doubles our damage in a way, but not fully. But we've taken this concept even further, and we are utilizing Vortex. So Vortex is now a instantaneous ability, and it also interacts with Frostbolts. However, unlike Ice Nova, Frostbolt gets consumed every time we use the Vortex. All of the projectiles coming out of the cast itself get consumed with like a short delay in between. It's probably about, I don't know, 0.2 of a second that each Frostbolt gets consumed by the Vortex. And the reason why this is really cool is because Vortex does have that very short cooldown, but we have a tremendous amount of Frostbolts flying everywhere. So if we just spam our Vortex key, not only will we be tossing out a ton of Ice Novas and Frostbolts, but also we're going to be spamming that Vortex that's going to be consuming our Frostbolts that already probably hit the target anyway. Because we have 3 projectiles, but they don't shotgun, so only one of them really needs to hit the target to deal damage. So yeah, it's pretty cool because it's a crit Vortex build. Yeah. So also another thing was that I really struggled a lot with just using all the abilities at the same time. The rotation itself was pretty difficult. And yeah, spamming Q all the way while trying to keep up your flask. In my case, the Vortex cooldown, the Vortex keybind is Q. Spamming Q all the way was just not particularly comfortable. However, we have found a solution. I use a AUTOHOTKEY that allows me to click my Q every time I use my mouse wheel. So you cannot set this up by default in the options, but this is totally something that you can do. It's not against TOS or anything like that. It's a single key press that performs just another action on top of the usual action that it would perform. So because we can't get it in the settings, again, I simply have an AUTOHOTKEY that I'm going to be linking in the description. The way it's going to work is that because we have basically nothing to do while we're cycloning, right? We have our keyboard hand constantly clicking the different abilities and utilizing our potions, and also obviously hovering over the life potion and the logout macro for whenever we need it. Our mouse hand is just spinning with Cyclone, which leaves us moving with the Cyclone. So while we're spinning, we're just scrolling our wheel with this macro, and this continuously will keep using Vortex, and it's just super comfortable, and you will see a massive difference in single target. It's actually really cool. So whenever you feel frustrated, maybe a fight is taking a little bit too long, scroll the mouse wheel and it'll absolutely increase your damage. So that's a very current action. Not to mention that you can use it also to just clear maps better. If you see a Vortex flying towards a pack, or a Frostbolt, excuse me, flying towards a pack, and you know that it's not going to kill all the mobs, just click your Vortex. It's instantaneous cast, and it'll kill the pack. So that's absolutely something that you can utilize. We also use some pretty cool gear. Again, I won't be explaining all of it. You can definitely check out the description below for my current character POB. It's also the footage that you're watching at the moment. Obviously, I'll release a full guide once the character is just a little bit closer, if not complete, in the near future. The reason why we went for Scion and not something like Assassin, or maybe, yeah, I don't know, people have been asking about Assassin primarily. We have enough crit, and the skill tree, this is one of those builds that just very, very, very point dependent. Most Scion skill trees really are, but this one in particular, because we saved something like 16 or 18 points traveling and just the points from Scion because of our skill tree, and that's a lot. That's like 20% of all your points that you're probably going to be getting on your build. It's a lot. It's super efficient. And then also, yeah, if you're going to take the time and effort to invest into the build, Might of the Meek and Natural Instinct are just super duper strong. Scion, Slayer, Leech is extremely powerful, and honestly your last ascendancy is kind of customizable. Like I mentioned, I did go with the Pathfinder for the movement speed, for the flask, and for the attack speed, but that might change in the future too. Who really knows? But yeah, we do use a hits cannot be evaded Gemini Claw, which is pretty cool. You can see that on the screen. It's been serving me really well. Honestly, another option was to use a sword, but we ended up going with the claw. I think it was the far better option because the build is mind over matter. We currently use a nearby enemies have minus the cold resistance helmet. This is crafted through a fossil, but we will be looking to craft an even better one now that we are utilizing Vortex a little bit more. And hopefully in the future, we're going to have a helmet that's going to have just a ton of life. Nearby enemies have -9 cold resistance, and then on top of it, probably something like hypothermia. I'm looking to use a frigid and a pristine fossils for that. So wish me luck with that. It's going to be a 5-link for our Vortex. It should work out pretty great. We have a pretty cool amulet, like I mentioned before. This is a temple amulet, and the way you obtain it is anytime you do one of the temples, you have a chance to drop this, an incursion temple, and this will be a blue amulet. You can probably find tons of these with the 0.4 cold damage leashed as life mod on PoE.trade or on the PoE trading website, whichever one you prefer. Once you have one of these, and hopefully it's got one mod, it's not augmented, so it's only got the mod that we're looking for, you're going to be regaling it, and then you're going to be annulling the mod that you got. Unless you got something good, maybe you're going to regal life or a potentially useful suffix, then you don't have to do anything more with it. But if you get a mod that is unwanted, you want to annul that mod off. Hopefully you're going to hit it. It's a 50% chance. Got to get lucky. At which point you're going to be left with either the good amulet or the amulet with just the one stat that we needed. And you can multi-mod it. Honestly, a lot of these mods are optional. I went with the life, increased area of effect, and area damage. Again, the multi-mod, like we mentioned before. The increased damage while leeching, that's helping a lot because we are slayers. So oftentimes after a boss fight, or often if you fight something tanky and you pop your focus, you're going to have like a full 1 minute of overleech. Not even kidding. I've had over a minute of overleech and my build's not even doing that much damage now compared to what it's going to be doing in the future because it's only on a 5 link. So it's only going to look better in the next coming days. And then also you have Volpact while focused, 10% of damage leashed as life while focused, which is obviously the most important mod like we've discussed before. And that's pretty much it. I do recommend an Assassin's Mark on hit ring. This grants us a lot of power charges. Prior to getting one of these, I was also using Assassin as one of my ascendancies, but eventually I found that we simply have enough crit, so you don't have to use Assassin, and I ended up switching to Pathfinder. You do have to modify the skill tree quite a bit, which is a little bit unfortunate because I really liked the Assassin skill tree, but you gotta do what you gotta do. It does end up being quite a bit efficient. We still connect all the way to the Shadow skill tree because we use a pure talent jewel, which grants us 0.5% critical strike chance. This is base on all our abilities, so it's super useful. Obviously, we also get the Ranger start, which is the 7% movement speed, and we also get the Scion start, which is the 25 to all attributes. Everything else pretty much goes as you usually would in a Scion. The Might of the Meek, double Might of the Meek on the jewels in the video that you're watching. I'm only using one. And a Natural Instinct in the super late game. Obviously, those things are pretty costly. I'm not using one currently, but I am looking to get one in the future. And yeah, that's pretty much standard for the build. I will be looking to get some Cannot Be Frozen boots with more movement speed. Currently, I also think I'm lacking quite a bit of movement speed, not just attack speed, but we'll be fixing that in the near future. And yeah, your gloves can be a little bit random. I probably will eventually somehow modify my sockets so that I can hopefully get Whirling Blades onto a pair of Insanity gloves, because I really would like for my Whirling Blades to just be a little bit faster. Also, another cool thing that you can do with your gear, and this applies to any build, but for this one I thought the damage increase was pretty noticeable, is craft a belt, preferably a Stygian Vice. And for this build in particular, I used a Pristine, a Frigid, and a Prismatic Fossil. You can also craft increased 20% increased damage. That's a pretty freaking good belt. That's like 80% increased damage belt with life, with an abyssal socket, with like 2 resistances. Pretty good. I can absolutely recommend that. And yeah, as for leveling's a little bit tricky. I wouldn't recommend switching to the build before like level 70. It really depends on your gear. You do need quite a bit of time to get all the points that you would need for a build, because as any Scion build, it is very spread out, and also you need Uberlap to actually get on over to the Shadow or to the Ranger. So for the leveling stages, I would highly recommend that you simply pick up Stormbrand, pick up a Lightning Spire Trap, exit through the mana nodes as we do on the skill tree, head on over to the Templar, go across Retribution next to Mind Over Matter over at the Templar, then into Holy Dominion, then into Devotion, pick up Runebinder and possibly Explosive Runes, and just, yeah, level with Stormbrand. Honestly, it's pretty strong. Not as strong as a Witch or something like that, because we barely get any damage nodes, but possibly if you've got a Tabula Rasa lying around, or just some life sprigs, maybe some early like crit gear like Axioms, that's going to go a long way. But do keep in mind that, yeah, it's kind of ugly and it's kind of clunky early on, and I also don't recommend going that early crit route like I mentioned before. Maybe pick up Elemental Overload. It's very easy to proc that with the Stormbrats themselves, and the Lightning Spire Trap is going to help you out with a single target. And yeah, once you feel confident enough that you've got enough points, switch on over to the build and have a lot of fun. If you don't have the weapon, if you can't necessarily afford it, I do recommend going for Ornament of the East. And yeah, that's what I used. It's just very comfortable because of the hits cannot be evaded, so you're just getting used to it. It's got pretty decent attack speed. It's got quite low crit, so that's why I'm recommending the Assassin early on. And obviously it doesn't give us any damage, but it should be enough to at least carry you all the way to maps, or even in the like early maps. I've only run white and yellow maps, and so far the build's just blasted through everything super comfortably with no issues at all, and also super fun. Also, if you need more information than just what we covered in the video, what you saw on the screen, be sure to check out the link in the description below the video itself. And if you want to see the build in action, or if you want to maybe see how it's developing, be sure to tune into the stream at twitch.tv/RaizQT.